The countdown is on, but you're not alone. This is Countdown to College, your weekly guide from Education Quest Foundation, here to help you plan, apply, and pay for college one step at a time. I'm your host, Gage, and today I am joined by Jason Combs, Director for Marketing and Technology at Education Quest. Hi, Jason. Thank you for hopping on.
Thank you again for having me here.
Now, I asked Jason to join us again for this episode because he is quite the tech guru. And with the new school year starting, I thought it'd be like a great opportunity to set y'all up with some apps to make your school year easier. Because, there are hundreds of studying apps and calendars, grammar checkers, and a bunch of other academic related apps. So, Jason, we need your help picking out what will help students the most. So, let's just dive
On it.
in. In general, what are some of like the biggest challenges that students face at the start of the school year?
Yeah, there's a lot that faces students when you transition between levels. We talk a lot at Education Quest about the transition from high school to college. But in the world of technology and stuff, I see a lot of the same issues with transitioning from like middle school to high school, or junior high to high school. There's just a lot going on. There's a lot of personal aspects that kind of change. There's social aspects that change. And there's just challenges that kind of, come with that. And then you add on to that, new expectations in the classroom. And so hopefully some of the apps that we talk about today and stuff are going to help you kind of ease that. And I think that's really what our goal is with this episode of the podcast is to say like, let's take some of that burden off of the student in the classroom so that they can deal more with those life changes and out of classroom effects of that transition.
Hmm. There's always, pen and paper and like a classic planner. So, how can, technology and specifically apps help students feel more organized and confident?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. The reminders on calendar apps, reminders in note-taking apps, task apps. Reminders are always kind of a big thing for me. It's also nice, I think, when apps take over like an aspect of our lives. Yeah, there's tedious little things that if it can make that a little bit faster or make it so you don't have to create it. Those are all things I think that. Um, are just useful aspects that can help you feel like you have it together, kind of thing. And I think the more that you are organized, the more you're confident. So they kind of go in hand. You kind of don't get one without the other.
Yeah, I still have like a paper planner, but if I don't look at that for like 2 days, I don't know where I am. And so I have like reminders in my phone too and a calendar just because I love the feeling of writing in a planner, but I know that I'm gonna miss stuff if I don't have like some reminders set up somewhere at least.
Yeah, my problem back when I had paper and pen stuff was I I just never had it with me. And so it's like, hey, can you do this? Sure. Because I'm relying on, do I remember what I wrote down on Tuesday at 8 p.m. And then you get there and I get home and I realize like, oh yeah, well, now I have to make a choice between two things. And I always hated making choices.
Yeah, I was definitely that kid that was always asking everyone else for a pen or pencil because I just never had one on me. And so let's just dive into some of these apps, Jason. What are some of like the most effective note-taking apps for high school or college students?
Yeah, I think that's the starting spot for a lot of students is, some way to kind of manage the notes that they're going to have, different classes. It's just, especially getting into college, it's not like you're going to have a biology class for an entire year. You might have it for a quarter, you might have it semester, and so there's just a lot of the management aspects of that stuff out there, and there's a ton out there. They all do things basically the same with some little differences. And so it's really hard when we talk, I'll probably say this a ton today. It's very difficult to recommend any one app because I think that just like we talk about there being the right college for you and you having to, find the right fit and things. I think it's going to be the same way with a lot of these apps. There's different apps in these categories and spaces, and you just have to find one that works for you. Evernote was kind of my go-to for a long time. They are they're a great app. They've been around for a while, so you don't have to worry about, okay, what happens if this app goes away, and where does all my notes go, and kind of thing. A lot of focus on organization, which I needed and I appreciated, and so not just notebooks where you can put stuff for classes or something, and organize it in quote unquote books, but there's a lot of good, tagging and cross-referencing, and so I'll go in there even today, nowadays and stuff. Like, I'll go into a conference and I'll take notes in Evernote and tag it for SEO and AI and tech and marketing and all these different things, so that I can just say, like, okay, so now I don't care what notebook it's in, I'm just looking for information on whatever it is. And so I've seen some students get some really crazy Evernotes going with that stuff. Same thing with Notion. Notion does a lot of the same stuff, so that's another good app out there for you to kind of look at. Good Notes, I know, is a really popular one too. I think their interface is probably one of the better ones. So some people just like the clean look of it, and that's what gets them really. We talked about the stress of this. This is something that you don't want this to be stressful. So if you don't like the way that it's organized or looked, like, cut it, get on. Um, one of the new ones, Google Notebook, was released fairly recently. It's kind of an update on what Google's done in the past, but it's been a real big focus on research stuff. So I think it's going to be one that a lot of students, when they get into college, because of the emphasis on writing, sourcing, things like that, like, I think that one's going to rise to a lot of students' top of their list. And then Node GPT is one that's been very, very popular. It has a lot of AI features. So if you're big into tech and you really like the whole, like, I want my whole world to be artificial intelligence, then GPT might be your go-to and the first one you take a look at.
And so we're talking about digital notes right now. How do these still compare to like just the classic pen and paper handwritten ones in terms of retention and organization?
Well, for me, I can read it. So my handwriting is atrocious. That was probably my biggest problem in college, is I took notes in class and then got back to the dorm room and went, what is this Sanskrit I just wrote? You'd think I'd be better about reading my own, but man, I was really bad at that. So, um, yeah, I mean, I think that's, you're capturing things like that. I think the organization we talked about, that's a big thing for these things. It excels at your ability to keep notes from one class separate from notes from another, or like I talked about with Evernote, like identifying topics and things like that. AI has really changed a lot of these apps. A lot of them have dove headfirst into those things to try to help take that off your plate. So identify common themes, and automate some of the categorizations, and make it so that if you want to search for something, there's AI built into the search, so you don't have to remember to tag it as cellular biology. It's just going to know that what you're talking about and what you have in there helps with that. I think the other thing that I'll point out with a lot of these digital apps is their ability to go beyond just straight note taking, like you and I have kind of talked about, and then you've referenced with pen and paper. Its ability to link out to website, pull information from the web, its ability to take images. I use this a lot at conferences. They put up a slide. The slide's got way too much information on it. I don't have time to transcribe it. Snap a picture, automatically in the note, moving on. And again, the AI, its ability to search the image that I took to find the text that I'm looking for, is kind of insane, but very helpful. And also, I've noticed like Notion and Google News Notebook and Evernote are three that I know for a fact do, as I'm sure a lot of them do it. But their ability to record audio files. And so you can just sit here and take your notes, have it record the lecture, and if you miss something, you have that audio file to kind of go back to. I remember having, this is way back when, because I'm old and ancient. Uh, Way back when I was in college, I had a professor that actually recorded on audio cassette tape I'm sorry if some of our listeners don't know what a cassette tape is. But that's what he recorded on cassette tape. And then you could go into his office during the week and just ask for the lecture and he'd give it to you. You could take it, listen to the lecture and get your notes and come back. And I'm like, there was a couple times I needed that. He talked really fast. Um, and so it was like super helpful. But now I look at like Evernote going, oh my gosh, I could have just pressed a button and it would record every lecture and it would be in the note with my notes, with my images, with all of my stuff. So a lot of features like that that you don't get when you have pen and paper.
Yeah, I mean, definitely organization for me, just because I hate carrying around like a heavy backpack. And
Hmm.
especially in college, like my freshman year, didn't really put much thought into it. Had a different notebook, different folder for every single class. My back was in so much pain walking across campus. And so I moved actually to I take notes on my iPad, still handwritten. I invested in an Apple Pencil. But I mean, that's like, I don't even know how much an iPad weighs, like half a pound or something compared to a bunch of heavy notebooks. So
Yeah.
for me, that
And
was great.
I think that's a good point is that even if you're looking for what we call transitional apps that maybe aren't full feature, but do that. Like a lot of these things come, built in with a note app with these tablets and stuff. And so use one of those to still take your handwritten notes, but I'm willing to bet your notes, if you just pull up your phone, you can still get to all those notes. And you just think of how like that changes things for students of what was that thing we were talking about in class? I want to look it up now while it's fresh in my head, but my iPad's back in my dorm. I don't. I pull out my phone and I can still see it,
Hmm.
right? That when I like I mentioned, like that was a hard thing for me with pen and paper is that I just never had it when I needed it with a planner. So it's kind of cool that it's an always there kind of thing now.
Yeah, and so I mean, we already talked about, syncing, which again, huge for me too, because I can see it on my computer, my phone, my iPad. It's great. Voice recording. What else makes an app stand out? Because I know some of these apps like share the same features, things like that.
Yeah, you're going to see a ton of overlap in all of these categories. And a lot of them subscribe to the freemium model, so you're going to be able to use everything for free for a certain amount of time and then you're going to be kind of like hyper limited on what you can and can't do with those apps. And so it can be difficult, but I always encourage people like dive in, get knee deep in it, figure out if it's going to be worth it. Um, you know, I know we've talked about streaming services and kind of the change from traditional cable to streaming and people that just buy a bunch of streaming services and never watch anything on it. It's kind of the same thing here. You don't want to buy an app or subscribe to an app service and then never use it. So definitely kind of keep your eyes on what are the paid features, but also what are the free features, and can you get away with just using the free features? Sometimes that's what sets it apart. Is that app one, I probably like a little bit better, but it's going to cost me $3.99, $4.99 a month. App two has everything that I need and it doesn't cost me anything. Well, I'd probably go with the free version then. And just making sure that you're getting value out of it. The one thing I will say, as you're trying apps, a lot of people will just try an app and then delete the app, even if it's a free one. It's like, I try it out, few weeks, maybe a month, don't like it, delete it from my phone and think, I'm done. Very much encourage people to delete the account, then delete the app. And in that order, that way you don't have any data just kind of sitting out on some app that you've never used that when there is a breach of those things you're kind of exposed to things. So I know we're not talking about security and stuff, that'll be another podcast on another day, but I just felt it important to make sure that as we're telling people about all these great apps, that we make sure we let them know, like, try it, just make sure you delete it the right way.
Yeah. I think it's definitely important. That and be careful with free trials because I've been hit with some crazy charges out of nowhere because I forgot about my free trial.
Yeah, they make you
And
put that credit card in and you just kind of forget about it, and then boom, here's an annual charge for $100 or something, and you're just like, man, when you're a college student, that's a lot. That
yeah,
hits you
yeah.
hard.
Well, anyways, flashcards, are another popular studying tool besides just writing notes. What flashcard apps do you recommend and why? Because there are so many.
Yeah, no shortage of those, right? Just like the note-taking ones, there's a lot of those out there too. And that makes it hard to recommend any one because I think it's so personal. And just because like it's one that I like doesn't mean that it's going to work for someone else. I mean, I recommend stuff to my kids all the time and they just tell me to kick rocks most of the time. So, I think you got to try things, you got to see or know what you want and kind of read their websites about like how I need this feature, how is it done in this app? Um, and then, maybe make a more educated guess as to uh, what you're gonna kind of try out to begin with. To put some ideas in people's heads. Uh, there's one I don't hear a lot about. It's called Anki, Anki, and I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. It's a weird one, but I really like it. It's kind of cool. I know a lot of PhD students, a lot of the people I know that are in med school use it. I think it's just a little bit more kind of on that like upper end scale of the studying aspects to it. But that may be something that's right in line for even a high school student. So if it's laid out the way you want, check that out. I think Quizlet's probably the most popular, the most well known. Um, I think if you ask 9 out of 10 people, will probably say that one. So corner of the market, that's good. Comes with it. There's good things and bad things with it, but it integrates a lot. So I think that's probably for me the nicest feature about Quizlet is how well it integrates with a lot of other things. Um, Same thing with like Evernote has a note taking like a flashcard kind of thing where you can create flashcards from notes. And Study Smarter connects to a lot of apps where you can say like I'm using this for notes and let me help you kind of create that or turn that into flashcards.
I know a big thing for me in college was, studying with friends, working on like upcoming exams together and stuff like that. So are there any like collaborative features that let students, share decks or study together?
Yeah, there's an app called Cram that has probably one of the largest set of pre-built decks. I wouldn't call it like a social study with friends kind of thing, but it's a way to make it a little bit easier on you, or you can publish your own to Cram, and then your friends can latch on to that and stuff. Um, there's a few of them that have community areas where you can share that. Um, I know someone who creates slides in Canva as kind of a study slideshow almost, and then he sells them to classmates, and that's kind of how he makes money in college. Created a nice little business out of it, I guess. So it's interesting to me when he was telling me about this is like it's not an app that I would normally go to you and say like, "Hey, what's a slideshow? What's a quiz app or a flashcard app or something like that?" And I'm like, "Oh, but totally can see how you could use it for that." So think outside the box. Sometimes some apps that you already use might be able to accomplish what you need, and you don't have to go out there and buy another or try another.
Yeah, I was always the kid in my college class that had the Quizlet put together. And so I
Uh-huh.
would get tons of messages like, can you share the link, please? Can you share the slides?
In my day, it was, can I borrow your notebook so that I can like copy your handwritten notes? That didn't last very long because, like I said, my handwriting was terrible. So no one really, as complete as my notes were, no one really could read them, so it wasn't helpful.
So when it comes to homework, Jason, are there any apps you suggest for managing assignments, due dates, and big projects?
Yeah, way too many because that's a huge thing. And I think a lot of people start with just what's already pre-built into your phones, your tablets, your computers. A lot of high schools and stuff utilize Google services, and so a Google Calendar can actually do a ton for you. The one word of caution I have with that, we run into this a lot, is that when you're in high school, you don't own that account. And so some schools will give you a way to extract that data and move it over into something else. Other schools are just like, hey, when you graduate, that's it. You're cut off. You're done. Goodbye. And you kind of lose all that. So be cautious about some of those things if you're utilizing school based services. But if you're utilizing your own, if you also have a Chromebook or iPad or whatever it may be, sometimes those are a good place to kind of get started. If you want to take it to the next level, I'm a big fan of Calendly. I've used it for a long time. I think it's great for as a family organizing our calendars and that stuff. So I'm big fan of that one. Any.do is another one that's extremely popular. Just to kind of manage when are things due, what am I doing, where am I going, when am I working, when am I in class. I know people will put, what assignments are due and the due dates on there so they know, and schedules and notifications and all kinds of stuff like that. I think it's just massively helpful. My homework is one I've heard about for a long time about managing what's due, kind of turning your syllabus that you get in college, the syllabus for high school students that maybe not know this, but like syllabus is just kind of the outline of everything that's due in the class and when you're going to cover what and things like that. Um, I've even seen that some of their new AI features and stuff will let you take snap a picture of your syllabus or screenshot it from whatever app they're using to manage classes and things. And from that, create everything that you need kind of in my homework. So that's pretty cool. Um, there's also a lot of, I say, task managers, kind of like Todoist, Asana, Trello. Those are all ones that I think are really, really good at just kind of managing what is due and when is it due and sending you push notifications to your phone and creating follow-ups and having like automated things and stuff. That's kind of really big. And if you're looking at those, I will say that Trello and Asana are probably ones that I hear about most in the work life kind of space. So if you're looking at saying like I want to get used to something in college or high school or something like that, that maybe I have to use when I'm a professional and working employed by someone else or something, those might be ones to kind of lean to for that reason. So something to think about.
Yeah, I think that's a great recommendation because you'll see a lot on job applications, especially like post-college graduation that are like have experience using like this task manager in this setting. And so if you can kind of get used to those early, I think it'd be a great idea actually.
Yeah.
And so how can students use these tools to stay on top of tasks without getting overwhelmed?
Well, populating the information, that's always the big thing. If you don't use it, it's not very helpful. I find that voice integration is probably the most helpful thing for me. Uh, you know, Asana has this, Trello has this, Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, those types of things are pre-built into your system, so they do a really good job of this. Just being able to ask the personal assistant. I can't use her name because everything goes off. Uh, but asking it to create a task in your task app to study. So like I can tell mine to create a task in Asana to do this, or add to my calendar study for the chem test at 8 p.m. on Thursday. And it's just a lot faster than me opening up the app on my phone and going to Thursday, finding 8 p.m., tapping it, typing it all in, mistyping it because I fat finger everything, and then I get a reminder for a I don't know biology test instead of chem test or something crazy like that. So yeah, so that voice integration is like hugely helpful in my world, and honestly, my kids have gotten into that too. Like I see them doing it all the time to speak to their phone and tell it to do something, and it's just becoming part of the world now.
Yeah, and once you graduate from college, it's going to be a lot of create a note, buy milk. Like it's a lot of that for me. And so we've talked about all these great apps, Jason, and everything. Do you have any tips for students actually setting these apps up? Like, should they do it at the start of the school year? Should they do it in the summer? What's that look like?
Yeah, summer is a great time. If you when you're making that transition, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And so you don't know how busy you're going to be. You don't know what it's going to be like with new classes, new social structures. And that can cause a lot of stress. It can also cause a lot of time, take time off your schedule. And so uh, I think if you set that stuff up and try to like start to figure out which ones are going to be helpful for you in the summer, it's just one less thing that you're kind of having to like mentally deal with while you're in the school year. And I'm always about kind of eliminating that stress. You also have more time to do your research and um, figure out which ones are going to be, you know, good for you. I would say a tip is to stick with it for maybe a semester or something. I know a lot of people who try something about it they don't like, they get rid of it in a couple weeks, and then a couple years later or something, one of their friends loves it, and they come back to it, and then they start kind of liking it a little bit more. So give it some time, let it grow on you, really analyze. And sometimes it's good to say like, okay, so I'm going to start month to month on some of these subscriptions and say like, all right, I'm going to give it till December. So I'll just pay month to month until December, and then if it's working for me in December, I'll get the cheaper price and just buy the full year kind of thing. So I think that kind of helps. The other thing I will say, kind of back to the security piece of it, is give it as little information as you need to, particularly when setting up accounts and stuff. I see a lot of these apps ask questions that I'm like, why do you need to know my race and ethnicity for a note taking app? Like, what
Mm.
does that have to do with anything? If you can skip it, skip it. There's just no reason they need that information unless they need it.
We're so glad we have you here for all of the security concerns, because half of these things are things I never think about. So,
Ignorance is bliss, right?
all right, last question for you, Jason.
Okay.
Let's say a student, is running out of storage on their phone, which is common. That happens to me constantly, and they can only download one app. What would you recommend and why?
Oh God, one to rule them all. I'd recommend that they delete some pictures and videos. Honestly, because you're probably going to need more than one. So that's the really kind of really hard thing. But for me, I think the apps that seem to make the biggest difference for students that I interact with are always calendar apps and task managers. Those are kind of the two that like it just you don't think about them. A lot of times they just kind of they're beasts. They just run. They do what they do well. And you just don't realize like how integral they are until either you don't have it for some reason and you have to find something else and you start realizing, man, I really relied on that app a lot. Or when you have to move to something, it's I don't know if you experienced any of this when you kind of came into the professional world and stuff, but I see a lot of people that are like, I'm used to using Trello, but I got a job and now I'm using Asana, and like that transition, you start to realize like how much you relied on Trello. And it's not that Asana's a bad app kind of thing. It's just like you built your life around kind of the way this app works. And so I think those are the types of apps that kind of really uh, make a difference in that. And I say because what a lot of students don't realize, particularly in the transition from high school to college, is that in high school, like there's a lot of comeback resilience that you can kind of have. Um, in college, if you get a zero on something because you forgot that it was due, and you just didn't have the time and you had to cram, or you forgot to study for something and you end up, with a really low grade, um, those types of things are really difficult to come back from. You don't have a lot of assignments to kind of uh, blend the water with, and so it becomes imperative that your time management skills at that point in your life are up to speed and ready to go. And so doing this in high school, getting used to using something like a task manager or a calendar app can really make a difference later on in life because you have that uh, routine kind of built in.
I am glad you mentioned that because, like we talked about in our, what I wish I knew before college episode, I took that astronomy class, and that C I got in that astronomy class stuck with me the entire rest of my college career. It didn't tank my GPA, but like it's so weighted that, those things will make an impact
Yeah.
overall. So, well, thank you again, Jason, for sharing all of your tech expertise. To our audience, if you ever need help with anything college related, you can contact an Education Quest office near you for free help. You can find all of our contact information or schedule an appointment at educationquest.org. While you are there, also make sure you sign up for the weekly Countdown to College email that's filled with college tips and tricks. Also, help us get this message out to as many students and families as possible by subscribing to this podcast on your favorite platform and hitting the like button on the episode. Thanks for watching and listening, and we will see you next week.